It's go time.
Welcome to the Third Down Gamble podcast with your hosts, Don Charbin and Heath Graham. Elks head coach Mark Killam discusses the season series point spread and the result of the game versus Winnipeg.
You know, we thought about it. It was always, we got to win first. You know what I mean? We got to win first. We got to do the right things to win the game. And then if we can control it late to try to make sure we maintain that, then let's do that. But the win was most important. And, I'm happy we got the dub. Not the prettiest at times, but finding a way, all three phases, finding a way against a good football team and keeping the hope alive. And you know what? I want to shout out the fans that were here because they were loud when it mattered tonight. And, it wasn't, the best weather out there. It's a little fresh, but that's fall playoff style football weather. And they were loud. And when we started this thing, we wanted to play well at home all year. And we're trying to trend that way right now.
Mark Killam was excited that the Elks have now put consecutive wins together. The Elks are definitely an improving football team. They're getting more of an opponent that you don't want to face anymore. Winnipeg found that out. It starts off with him talking about whether or not that point spread was on his mind and what was he going to do about it. And he said, win first, we'll deal with the rest later. Okay, look at where you are in the standings. And then now, how do you assess that approach?
If you're playing a team 3 times, fine, don't worry about it. Get the W first, worry about the rest later. It'll sort itself out unless you happen to tie. We saw 2 ties last year. We haven't seen any so far this season. Season's not over yet. When you're playing a team twice, you have a home and away with the team, that margin of victory becomes very important. And we are in a situation right now where it is extremely important for the Edmonton Elks fighting for their playoff lives. Realistically, the only team they have a shot at displacing is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That's the team that they met head-to-head, and that point spread needs to be front of mind. I think it's a bit of a failure on that coaching staff to not be cognizant of that and try to get those extra points where they could.
The other team that they could go after and catch and in a head-to-head actually win out is the Calgary Stampeders. The problem for the Elks in this situation is that the Stampeders play the Toronto Argonauts at home first. That is going to be a tough way. Look at the tiebreaker rules. Number 1 has won the greater number of games played between or amongst the member clubs of the league. So basically, that's your standings. Number 2 has the higher winning percentage in all games played against all other teams that are tied with you. And this is now the big one. The Elks are not any better than anybody else in their grouping. If it's just the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they're tied 1-1. If the Stampeders in them tie, the Elks have to win that last game of the season against Calgary, then they would have the season series against the Stampeders, and they don't want Winnipeg involved in that mix necessarily. So you go to the next one, which has scored the net aggregate of points, and there is the rub right there. This is the Elks in that last 40 seconds, not going for it. If Edmonton goes down the field and scores and then goes for the 2-point conversion and makes it, that season series is tied. Now you keep going down the ladder until you, I believe it's the 5th one, has the higher winner percentage of all games played against member clubs of that division. Well, Edmonton has that chance to control their destiny there. The Blue Bombers have 1 more game against the West. The most wins they could have is 4. The Elks, with 2 more games against the West, the most they could have is 5. They'd win the tiebreaker.
All this to say that the Bombers blew a golden opportunity to clinch a playoff spot last week, and mathematically the Elks are alive and really do have some control of it. They're depending on Winnipeg losing their remaining games to get into that situation. Last week, we talked about the possibility of 4 teams tying, including the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The Riders took care of business, clinched number 1 overall. There is still a mathematical chance that we have 4 teams tied at 9-9, which would essentially be tied for 2nd through 5th. Yes, there's a lot of things that have to come into play for that to happen, but we're still in a situation where chaos could reign.
Chaos is a great word, and the CFL loves it. It's going to be very difficult, though, for the Elks if they do not win out. If they do anything less than 2 wins, then the Elks are finished. And why is it you say, okay, wait a minute, why do they have to win out? Because the best they can do is tie Winnipeg in that scenario, and the Blue Bombers hold the tiebreaker. Why? Because of the point differential between the two teams. This is why Edmonton, in that final minute, instead of letting the clock run 20 seconds and taking the knee, basically, or at the end of the game, why aren't you just going full bore to win by the required amount? I don't understand this. What was the risk on the other side?
There wasn't really one. They had the game in hand. It was going to take a miracle for the Bombers to get 2 scores to pull out a victory. They had to go for it. And a good comparison is the original football or soccer, if you will, when you've got pool play going on in the World Cup or the European Championships or any of those situations. They used to stagger the games one after the other, and a team would often know the end result of the first game and how that affects their playoff chances. They now play those games simultaneously, and you've got madness at the end of some soccer matches. You've got somebody on that coaching staff watching the other game. We need to win this game and have more goals than team A playing in the other game. Oh, they just scored a goal. Now we're pushing forward, and it creates that sense of urgency to get the job done. There was a lack of urgency from Mark Killam and the Edmonton Elks in this one. They had a chance to get themselves a better opportunity to get into the playoffs, and they did not take that opportunity.
It's a better opportunity, and it's also maybe more security with that opportunity. If you win the season series or tie the season series, and you're supposed to, you're paid enough on that coaching staff, you should be able to know where you are in terms of tiebreakers, how this all plays out. And somebody along that sideline has got to have that written down, or is telling the coach, look, we've got 3 minutes to go. We still need to win by. And we've seen that with 2-game total point playoff rounds where the East used to do it and the West used to do it in their semifinals. The East used to do it even in their finals way back in the day. Don't tell me that they didn't know how far they were behind and how much they needed to do to have to come back to win. And there was a famous game, Saskatchewan and Calgary in 1963, where the Rough Riders, who got blown out in Calgary, rallied in the second half of the game against the Stampeders. And there is video of this, if you can believe this. You can go to YouTube, and I believe it's CFL Classics has it. And you can watch the Rough Riders come back and win that 2-game total point series 48-47 after trailing massively after game 1.
You even see it early on in the CFL season as well. It's when you know you're playing a team within your division and you're only playing them twice, all points matter. You don't see teams taking a knee. They will go for that last second field goal if they're already up by 2 scores, if they're only playing the team twice. These points matter. They matter early in the season, and they come back to bite you later on when you're in a situation such as the Elks find themselves in now.
The Elks, relatively speaking, it's still a massive wing and a prayer that they're living on right now. With Winnipeg playing a Saskatchewan team that is probably going to start its backup, and the Rough Riders having won first place, Winnipeg at home has got to be favored. So the Elks would technically go into BC having to win that game and then win in Calgary and hope that the Bombers then lose to the Alouettes. The Alouettes, when they come to town, they may have something to play for. They may have first place in the East, and that could be a different sort of circumstances for the Blue Bombers on that night. But the fact that you lost the season series means tying the Blue Bombers is out of the question. It means you've got to finish ahead of them. So if Winnipeg wins anywhere, the Elks are finished. That's it. It's done.
Speaking of the Montreal Alouettes, a month ago, it was looking like they were really hard pressed to challenge for first place in the East. The Ticats had it wrapped up, but we've seen these two teams kind of go in opposite directions over the last few games. And as you said, with a loss by the Ticats now, Montreal wins out. Guess what? First place is theirs.
This is what makes everything so exciting at the end. You're right. The Alouettes, who would have thought that they would have struggled so mightily with Davis Alexander out, but they did. And They have now righted themselves and they've gone on a big tear. And it, as I said in the last podcast, it reminds me of the 2023 season where the Alouettes, who were stuck in second in that year, went on a big tear and went on to win the Grey Cup. I think it was 7 or 8 in a row that they had to do to win that. Well, they're already in that process right now. The Tiger Cats are going backwards. They're struggling. And you're finding this actually, you look around, the top teams in the league have sort of stumbled back, and the teams that were second and third have been moving up. Let's go back to the Elks, though. I don't want to finish with that yet. The only hope that the Elks would have in a scenario where the Blue Bombers are not in the equation, then it becomes season series between them and the Stampeders. And the only way they tie the Stampeders is by winning 2 of 3 against the Stampeders in the season. Of course, with that final game of the season riding on that, they have to win that game. And then suddenly the Elks are in, the Stampeders of all teams are out.
That would be a pretty crazy scenario to have a 9-team win not in the playoffs in the West, but that's what we are staring down. Mathematically, it's possible. As we mentioned, there could be 4 teams at 9-9 if BC loses out, Calgary loses out, Edmonton and Winnipeg get some wins. It's a real strength of this West division. We talked about parity early on this season. We asked if this was a year where everybody finishes 9-9. Well, we could have 4 of those teams from the West, and Montreal's sitting at 9 wins right now as well. This is the parity that I think the CFL league dreams about.
They absolutely do. If you get everybody with a chance on the final weekend of making the playoffs, you can't ask for much more. Trying to determine where they're going to finish, although Saskatchewan has pretty much wrapped it up. But with the Tiger Cats down to 1 game, and if they don't do anything with it, and the Alouettes will be in Ottawa playing the Red Blacks in the return match, not knowing what has happened with the Tiger Cats yet. So they could be technically tied with the Tiger Cats playing on the final Saturday. The Tiger Cats would be playing Ottawa, trying to make it to first place to win. They hold the tiebreaker over the Alouettes, but you can't hang on to that unless you start doing something, because as Scott Milanovich said, there's an identity crisis with this football team. And Hamilton right now, who are they? Are they going to be a team that you fear, or are they going to be a team that you go, huh?
You look at the Ticats over the last 3 weeks, and inconsistent would be the word that jumps off the page for me. They got blown out in Winnipeg. They almost hang 50 on the Argonauts. They put up 47 points in that one, and they come back again with a mediocre performance against the Calgary Stampeders. They've dropped 2 of the last 3 and haven't looked very strong in doing so.
Montreal, if they come into Winnipeg knowing that they can win first place, that's a different lineup than if Montreal is stuck in second. But even in 2023, they went into places at the end of the season knowing that they were stuck in second and still beat people. It didn't matter to them where the Alouettes took care of business. They look to be the same type of team. Whether or not they will be is another question, but you can just see they're healthy. That team has come together. Other than James Letcher, everybody else that was supposed to be starting for that Montreal Alouette squad is starting. And that's the team they started the season with. That's this team that jumped out to an early first place run.
It is, and you're starting to see how dangerous they are as a team when healthy. And that's a big part of the CFL. The success of a team rides so much on the health of your players. Quarterback's obviously the most important position, and we've seen that if you go across the board and see how teams have performed with their number 1 guy out of the lineup. That defense, Darnell Sankey, Marc-Antoine Dequoy have stepped up their game. Dequoy had his best game of the season, I thought, this past week, and he looks to be healthy and dangerous.
We talk about the importance of quarterbacks, but here's something I want to talk to you about. Davis Alexander. This is about 1:10 on the clock when this play ends. And there's a flag thrown by the head official for roughing. Why? Because Ottawa defensive back, Deandre Lamont, has come up and given him a shoulder shiver to his face mask. In other words, he's plowed into Alexander right at the grill, knocks the helmet flying. The helmet, as I believe, as it goes past, hits his nose, causes a nosebleed, maybe some scrapes. He sticks it out as best he could, but eventually gets pulled off by the spotter 3 or 4 plays late. Doesn't look like he's concussed, but certainly could have been. Dave Foxcroft, who's in charge of the booth, says, wait a minute, that's not roughing. The officials on the field have to pull up the flag.
I don't necessarily agree with the replay center on this one. I believe their thought process was at this point he was a running back, not a quarterback in this situation. But you compare it to the NHL, where any primary point of contact to the head is penalized as a headshot in the NHL. The CFL, we see a lot of first contact to the head penalized. I'm not quite sure I understand fully why this flag was picked up. It was pretty obvious to me that first point of contact was Lamont's shoulder to Alexander's head.
I totally agree with you. And I wonder if they got caught up in a discussion that really didn't matter. And that was, well, he's no longer afforded the protection of being a quarterback because now he's become a running back. But if that was a running back, I don't care. That's still a 15-yard foul. That is targeting the head. And you can't say to me that Lamont didn't know what he was doing. It's not like Alexander's head, with respect to the ground, it didn't go up or down. It stayed more or less level. And Lamont came in and gave him a shiver. I keep calling it that, but he gave him a really hard shot to the head. I'm not picking on Lamont. He's playing to the best of his abilities. You know that defensive players are going to take a little bit of extra liberty when it's a quarterback coming through the line. And I don't understand what the booth was thinking, because I don't care if he's no longer afforded the protection of a quarterback. That's still a foul. And they called it on the field. They got it right on the field. What about all this talk about player safety? This is a headshot. This is what we're trying to take out of the game. And you just said, well, that's okay.
In this situation, Davis Alexander wasn't going to gain any more yardage other than maybe a couple of inches. He was held up. He was on his way to forward progress being stopped. Not necessarily taken to the ground, but forward progress wasn't going anywhere. This was a reckless play by Deandre Lamont. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say he was targeting the head or he came in with ill intent, but you're right. He came in with the intent of delivering a shot and sending a message to the quarterback. The way he delivered that hit is reckless. And I am more disappointed in the spotters not pulling Alexander off immediately as well. I think after taking that kind of hit, even though he was appearing to shake it off, he was also hunched over, coughing up blood by the looks of things, or coughing out blood probably from the nose injury. But you see a situation where a quarterback is behaving like that. He's hunched over, he's in discomfort, and player safety says that guy should be further evaluated on the sidelines and not having that opportunity to take the next couple of snaps.
I agree with you there. He should have been probably pulled out. If you're going to pull Davis Alexander off, then you have to have led that flag on the field and called the play as called. This to me is one time, and maybe there's more than this, but where the replay booth has just overstepped their bounds. This happened with the Toronto Argonauts against the Saskatchewan Roughriders, where Baldonado hits Jarrett Dagey, gets him in the chest, and is kind of pulling up, but he's sort of intending to hit him, and he's sort of not. But he hits him, and Dagey goes to the ground. They throw the flag, and again, it was picked up. I don't like that. If a quarterback is being hit after the ball's released or being hit in the head, I don't care if he's 50 yards down the field. Those are the guys that people pay to see. They want to see them do their job so that their favorite receiver can make their plays, or the running back can get the ball from them. This is the guy that stirs the coffee, as they say. Every team but Hamilton had to go to their backup. Every team has had to do it at least once. At what point do you start to think, wait a minute, we just can't have that anymore? We've got to have quarterbacks play all 18. Well, if you allow this to happen, I can take some hits for this, because I really think that this was almost an egregious error. Even if you said, oh, he just caught him in the grill. Well, remember way back when Drew Brown was hit, he was only caught in the grill as well.
Again, there's the question of whether he's still considered a quarterback or a running back. We've seen some pretty incidental contact to quarterbacks called roughing the passer and flagged for 15 yards. So you're telling me a guy coming in, he's trying to tip the pass, he misses, he comes down and glances his palm off the side of a quarterback's helmet. He's more deserving of 15 yards than Deandre Lamont was in this particular situation? I don't think so. Or a guy busts through the line and he's making a half-hearted effort to pull up, but maybe he chest bumps the quarterback a little bit. He gets flagged for 15 yards. that's more egregious than this one? I don't think so.
Whether or not they got caught up in, as I say, it has that feeling that they got caught up in this debate. Is he a runner or is he a quarterback? Well, I don't care if he's a running back, a receiver, a guy who just recovered a fumble and is moving forward, could be an offensive lineman. Nobody gets to get away with a headshot like that. And that's the point. And that's where you leave it with the on-field official. You may have some great replays. I just don't get it. I just don't get what you're looking for. Are you trying to undo a penalty? Is that what the point is?
And you mentioned Davis Alexander and the importance of having those star players on the field. What he's done this season as the starting quarterback for the Montreal Alouettes is record-breaking. He's undefeated as a starter. He's now got 10 consecutive wins under his belt as the starting quarterback. His first 10 starts in this league. It's an incredible run, and you don't want to see something knock him out like this. He had the leg injuries earlier on. Those were more non-contact. Those sorts of things happen. He got himself back and healthy, and you don't want to see him taken out with an unnecessary hit. And certainly you don't want to see that go unpunished.
My point is through all of this, you get a shot like that to the head, whoever gave it to you, that's automatic 15 and maybe 25. We've seen Drew Brown miss big portions of seasons because of headshots. Zach Collaros has had head injuries, neck injuries. Enough. There's a life after football. There has to be more protection within the game. Guys are learning not to hit sliding quarterbacks. Guys are learning not to take a cheap shot when the ball is gone. They're getting better at it. But if he turns the corner and you say all bets are off, then you're setting dangerous precedents all over the place, because what's to stop anybody from hitting him anywhere if they know the booth has got their back? There's been a lot of discussion about the playoff format and the fact that we touched on it early, that there could be a 9-9 team in the West not making the playoffs. Dwayne Ford has been very vocal about this. There have been others that have argued that the CFL should be a 1-9 league. And that's how they determine that the top 2 teams get the bye, and then the next 4 play off and go forward from there. Has merit on some level. Here is my question. If you want to do this, sell it to the division and their owners that will lose playoff revenue dates. And in this case, it's the East. Go to Montreal and say, look, Montreal, you haven't got the second best record overall. In fact, you're probably down around 3rd or 4th. There's going to be one Eastern team with a home date, and that'll be the Hamilton Tiger Cats as we speak. Tell me how the East is going to react to this when they say, well, wait a minute, we're playing and you guys get 3-4 home dates and we get 1?
As crazy as the standings are this year too, and I haven't done the complete math on it, but if all 5 teams in the West finish 9-9, Montreal finishes 9-9. Is Montreal that even out of the playoffs? And we have 1 team from the East and 5 teams from the West. That does not seem fair either. I would not change the format to a straight up 9-team 1 division league. You and I are traditionalists. I think we're on the same page in a lot of ways about seeing the necessity for the game to evolve and grow. Keeping the East Division and the West Division separate, I like it. We have not yet seen a West team crossover make it all the way to the Grey Cup. We have seen the Saskatchewan Roughriders won a playoff game coming through the East, lost the East final. It does happen on occasion, but you've still got those teams representing the East. And as you said, having guaranteed 2 teams to host home playoff games in each division, from a financial standpoint, that's what you want to see to have the success of the league as well. I am not in favor in any way of going to a single division league. Maybe these forthcoming changes see that magical 10th team come in as well. We can eliminate the crossover altogether if we get into that situation.
Well, you could keep the crossover if you wanted to, even in a 10-team league. If you have an imbalanced schedule, which is I'm a proponent of, so you play a minimum of 3 games. If you got a 5-team division, you play a minimum of 3 games against your opponents. That's 12 games that are swallowed up in your own division. You play 6 against the other, so 1 each against all 5, and then twice against one of the teams, specifically the one that finished in the same spot in the standings you did the year before. The odds are you're probably not going to have crossovers. This doesn't happen very often. The last time we even saw a crossover was 6 years ago. The number of times since they've had this is 30 years roughly that they've had the crossover. I think we've had 7. And everyone's jumping up and down. Every time there's an anomaly that comes along, everybody wants to run to the anomaly and say, that's the way we've got to deal with this because that's the problem we have. But that's the anomaly. 5 out of 6 times, it doesn't go that way.
Well, we also apparently have been very worried about the walk-off rouge. The once or twice that pops up every few seasons was enough to get people up in arms, and we've seen a rule change because of that as well. It's an overreaction, and I just am one that is not in favor of it at all. I also love to buy those charity Grey Cup tickets where you've got the East score and the West score. What happens if it's a one division? How am I going to know who I'm rooting for on my charity fundraising tickets?
Well, the interesting thing about all of this is that if the Blue Bombers wind up 4th, which is a very strong possibility, it's not unusual for Winnipeg to represent the East. They've done it quite a few times in their past.
They have. They're the one team that has won a Grey Cup as both a representative of the East and of the West, and actually multiple Grey Cups in both situations. So it's a little bit of a throwback to see Winnipeg back in the East Division in the playoffs, but it's not something that is completely unheard of.
But it's a different scenario when it happened before, because the Montreal Alouettes had disappeared as a franchise, meant that somebody from the West had to go East to fill that spot. Winnipeg, being the geographical, logical nearest, was that team, and they played in the Eastern Division all those years.
They did. You're right. They were the representative of the East because they played in the East Division all year, not because they came marching through as a crossover team. It's still a very hard road, certainly not impossible. And looking at all of the teams that are in the playoff picture right now, you could make arguments for pretty much any of them making a run in these playoffs. It's going to be a wide open year. Home field advantage is going to be important for team morale, and you want to defend that home turf, but it's going to be a wide open playoff this year.
Totally agree. Of the teams that are the hottest right now, you think Montreal and BC would be the most logical opponents in the Grey Cup, but it's not a given that they're going to be there. The Alouettes still have to get past the Tiger Cats no matter what. And will they have to get past a Western opponent on top of that? Or will the Tiger Cats have to do that and then take on the Alouettes in the East Final?
Hi, I'm Jeff Prever. I'm the Senior Director of Player and Game Statistics with the CFL, and you're listening to the Third Down Gamble podcast.
Week 19 in the CFL is in the books. The Saskatchewan Roughriders kicked it off against the Toronto Argonauts, a huge crowd in Regina. Cool night, but the Roughriders were hot enough to win 27-19. Jarrett Dagey, what a night for him. He gets injured, sent to the tent, comes back out, gets injured again, takes some time off, comes back out, gets injured a third time, goes off the field, comes back out. Like, if anything, the Argonauts have seen this guy wants to play. He's got massive heart, and he's a great rallying point for the Toronto Argonauts. Wow, did he take a beating against the Saskatchewan Roughriders?
There's no three knockdown rule in the CFL like there is in professional boxing, but he was beat up. He showed a lot of heart and a lot of determination to keep getting back in there. The Argonauts at this point aren't really fighting for anything in the standings. I mean, I guess they can have the honor of finishing third and missing the playoffs as opposed to finishing fourth and missing the playoffs. So to see that spirited performance by Jarrett Dagey speaks volumes to him as a man and as a player. A tough night all around for him and the Argonauts. They hung tough with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, but they just didn't have the horses to finish the job.
Dagey's overall night, 20 of 31 for 221, an interception and a touchdown. Tucker Horn had to be in there for a while. He was 4 of 5 for 35 yards. And Max Duggan also was in there. He attempted a pass, but it was incomplete. But you've got all three quarterbacks throwing the ball. Now, Duggins was on a second and short, tried a quick pass over the middle to Mackay Polk, but it seemed like Mackay Polk lost track of the ball in brilliant play, but it just didn't work out. They still got the first down on third down. The flip side, Trevor Harris, 23 of 29, that's 79, 80% success rate, 340 yards, 2 touchdowns himself. But again, the Rough Riders didn't look stellar doing what they did. The Argonauts, considering they were a team out of the playoffs, gave everything that the Rough Riders could handle and more.
We'll get into some wild plays that we saw this week, and I think we have to kick that off with the Sam Emelis catch in this one, using the defender's helmet as a bit of a aid in pulling the pass in. A remarkable catch and a really big night to see Sam Emelis. Great to see him healthy and trending upwards in the playoffs. Targeted 8 times, 6 catches for 142 yards, including a 50-yarder and an acrobatic catch of the year candidate.
We had a few this weekend. We'll continue to talk about this. On the flip side, the Argonauts really spread the ball around. 8 different receivers with catches. Nobody had a stellar night. Mackay Polk maybe the best with 4 catches on 8 targets for 55 yards. Dejon Brissett had the lone touchdown of the game for the Argonauts with a 30-yard touchdown reception. Most part, though, the Argonauts, the team that can't run, proved again they can't. Although Spencer Brown did a tremendous amount of work in the backfield trying to save his quarterback from getting sacked.
He did. And looking at the other side of things, Trevor Harris found 7 targets. The Rough Riders have a great way of finding these depth receivers as well. And I think we have to give mention to Tommy Neild and Joe Robustelli. 3 catches for Neild, including a touchdown for 39 yards. Robustelli 5 catches for 75. These guys have contributed in that depth role and getting those catches when needed. With the injuries that they've had this year to Sean Bain, Sam Emelis, Keon Schaefer-Baker, that importance of having those depth receivers is huge. And I thought those guys have really come into their own this year.
They have had almost a revolving door of receivers going through, just given the injuries and especially the demands of trying to find a depth receiver with Sean Bain out. The Rough Riders, though, with Joe Robustelli, they found a possession receiver, a little bit of depth to him, but it's going to be Emelis and it's going to be Keon Schaefer-Baker. Those are the 2 guys that are going to have to take the lids off of defenses and force them to respect the Rough Rider offense.
Any concern about Keyshawn Johnson? Targeted once, he had 1 catch for 3 yards in this one. He had a pretty hot start to the season, but has really kind of cooled off over the last few weeks. Well,
Keyshawn Johnson, unfortunately for him, he got tackled and it looked like his leg got kind of twisted a funny way. And I noticed, and so the Rough Rider bench is on the side where I sit, and I saw him come off the field. He walked off, but he sat down on the bench and threw his helmet. And that to me said, you're done for the night. I know that exasperated anger that you feel that something is not right in that leg. That's a huge loss if he's out for any length of time. Now, the fortunate thing for the Rough Riders, of course, they don't necessarily have to play him in these final 2 games. So that'll give them a lot of time to heal up. But the last thing you want to do is lose one of your top receivers, a guy who has torched so many defenders. Now, moving to Saturday, the Calgary Stampeders taking on the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I think we saw the Vernon Adams Jr. that we had seen back in the summer.
16 for 23, 257 yards, and no interceptions for Vernon Adams Jr. No touchdowns, but I think more importantly, no picks. He's had a pretty rough stretch of unforced errors, and I thought he did a really good job of running the offense this time around. A bit of a bounce back for Vernon Adams Jr. And
with 4 straight losses, and this is the first time that they've won since they lost Faloran Oromalade. Against Hamilton, they went after the Tiger Cats. Dedrick Mills, 17 carries for 105 yards. Ludovic Choquette, 7 carries for 73 yards. That 2-prong rushing attack really beat up the Hamilton defense, and the Hamilton defense just has not looked right. They've given up a lot of points.
They have. It was a little bit of a slow start, a back and forth field goal fest in the first quarter of this one, but things picked up a little bit later on. Rene Paredes finished the night 4 of 5. Mark Leggio, a perfect 2 for 2 on field goals as well. I don't know what it is about the Ticats right now. Bo Levi Mitchell throws over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns again, but 2 interceptions. They are struggling to find their identity. And we talked about over the last 3 weeks, the last 3 games, they had a really good showing in one game against Toronto, but kind of lackluster performance here and a disastrous game against Winnipeg 3 weeks ago.
Well, the Tiger Cats overall, just to further my point about their defense, They've given up 481 points. They've scored 490. That's a 10-7 team that's done that. The Toronto Argonauts, who have given up the most points at 539, are 5-12. Seems to make more sense. What is up, and what's with Brent Monson's defense? His defenses in Calgary were always good, but maybe it's just learning your system. Maybe that's part of the problem. The defensive line seems to be okay. I'm just worried especially with Jamal Peters on the shelf, that maybe the Ticats secondary isn't up to it. Stavros Kansantonis has done really well. There's enough talent. It's just, what is that problem with gelling?
It seems to be kind of all facets of the game, except maybe I would say their special teams have been playing pretty well of late, but I think both offensively and defensively, they need to get things sorted out. They're going to have some time. They need a win to lock up first place. They need to get that out of the way first. And if they do, they'll have that bye week going into the playoffs. They can get themselves all on the same page. But this is a first place team right now that I don't think really scares a lot of people.
Kenny Lawler, 8 catches, 113 yards. He gets a touchdown. Giovanni Robinson we talk about highlight reel catches. That one that he had at the back of the end zone where he's juggling the ball off his helmet. It's just a ridiculously good catch. Tim White, though, good at times, not so much other, had a touchdown ball in his hands, let it go to ground.
Finished the day with 8 catches for 104 yards, but those drops, I can picture several of them this season. Sometimes, especially early on this season, he had a couple of key drops early on, then had some big games. He's had a couple of big drops again over the last several weeks. He's got to be that number 2 threat. Kenny Lawler obviously is the number 1 receiver in this offense. He's proven it, and he is sure-handed and doesn't give up on a ball. Tim White needs to be that second threat, and right now it's really a 50-50.
And for the Calgary Stampeders, Eric Brooks, who's normally a return guy, is proving that he can be a threat as a receiver. 94 yards on 2 catches and the long of 69. We know that Vernon Adams Jr. lives for the deep ball. I've talked about this before. If you can get a couple of passes deep to start a game, you spread that defense out. They've got to respect it.
It's always exciting when they start mixing the return specialists into the offense. So we saw the BC Lions do that with Lucky Whitehead a few seasons ago. We've seen Khalil Pimpleton sneak into that role. He kind of started out as the backup return guy after Devontae Dedmon went down in Ottawa. Pimpleton came up as a big play guy, and now he is a feature receiver on that squad. So it'll be fun to watch what happens with Eric Brooks and his future, if he continues to just be that return specialist, or if they've got some plans on offense for VA to find him deep.
Now for the Calgary Stampeders, that win puts them up to 9 for the season, breaks that losing streak, and suddenly the narrative around that team turns around.
It's been a real up and down season for the Stamps. Early on, you thought they were going to be a contender for first. They might even run away with first overall in the East from the start. They took a step back. If they can string a couple of wins together here late in the season, they're somebody to be wary of come playoff time for sure.
The later game on Saturday with the Edmonton Elks playing the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, we went through our first segment talking a lot about what happened at the end of that game with the Elks not pressing the pedal and trying to win by as many points as possible, losing the season series to the Blue Bombers, even though they win the game 25-20. Decent crowd considering the weather. It was cold, wet to start the day, and most people, I think, gave up the ghost trying to go there.
25-20 is the total, is the final score in this one. Rough night for the quarterbacks. Zach Collaros ended up 22 of 34, 202 yards, 1 touchdown, but 2 interceptions. Cody Fajardo, 13 of 24, 54% completion rate, 142 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. A couple of game-breaking plays. Justin Rankin burst a long 64-yard run for a touchdown. That one really turned the tide in this game. We talked a little bit about the spectacular catch in that Rough Riders win. As I said, possibly a catch of the year candidate. And then Ontario Pokey Wilson comes in this game and makes a spectacular catch in double coverage that might have supplanted that one for the catch of the year.
He does a fantastic job of staying with the play. He doesn't give up on the football. And probably the biggest benefit that he got through all of this was Terrell Ford and his attempt to try to bat the ball up into the out of bounds or out of the area. And he whiffs it and it hits his arm and just pops the ball back up. This gives Wilson a second chance to go try and catch the football. And even though there's 3 players there and he's being tackled by one of them, he's got enough dexterity to reach back, tip, and catch that football for the touchdown. That was a massive touchdown for the Blue Bombers that moment. That's in the fourth quarter, and they're down by 2 touchdowns prior to that.
It is to have that concentration in double coverage. He essentially tipped the ball to himself twice and picked it up just above the turf for the touchdown. It was a little bit confusing because the ball was bouncing around so much that nobody was quite sure what happened until they signaled touchdown. And what a play that one was. Great to see him back in the CFL. I think he was a real find for the Blue Bombers last season. Tried his hand in the NFL this year, didn't work out, but he is a dangerous weapon for the Blue Bombers, and they're going to need it. Nick Dembski appeared to come up with a hamstring injury in this game as well, so you want to have some options available if you're making that push into the playoffs.
And that was a non-contact injury for Nick Dembski. It was a ball that was intercepted on the play, and he was just slowing down, and all of a sudden you saw that telltale reach for the back of your leg. Hopefully it isn't too much of a injury for him. We've seen with Davis Alexander, for instance, a hamstring injury put him on the 6th game. Players like Wilson, players like Kevin Sklarcius are going to have to do something to take up the slack, because Dembski, not only is he a deep threat, but he's your over the middle threat. He's your out of the backfield threat. He's your slot threat. He's like a Swiss Army knife back there. He does everything for that team.
He does. And we're hoping it's not a serious injury. You want to see the star players on the field in this game. And Justin Rankin, as I said, hot off of his 2-year contract extension, 18 carries for 138 yards with an additional 1 catch as well. -1 yards on the receiving core, but he continues to be that weapon. You talk about Nick Dembski and his flexibility. Justin Rankin's a guy for the Elks that is in a similar role. He's a feature running back, but he's also dangerous in getting those little check down passes and turning those into some big gains as well.
3rd and 2, and he busts one for 64 yards and a touchdown on the play. And you kind of wonder in the back of your mind, well, if they would do it in the second quarter, why aren't they doing more in the fourth quarter to win that season series? I don't quite understand. The Elks got more conservative in their thinking about winning the football game and what was needed as the game went on. Thanksgiving Monday, the Ottawa Red Blacks were in town to take on the Montreal Alouettes. The Red Blacks never really got off the bus and lose 30-10 to the Alouettes. Red Blacks defense, I'll give them credit. They stood in and they gave Montreal a tough go of it. But Dustin Crum and the offense, they looked befuddled.
They did. Is it 30-10 is the final in this one? The Alouettes, I think, are the team that I would be most afraid of meeting in the playoffs right at this very moment, given how they've come together. All facets of the game are great. We saw Jose Maltos Diaz with a kick that hammered into the up players for the Ottawa Red Blacks, led to a turnover.
Marc-Antoine Degois blocks a kick and then picks up the loose ball and goes in for a touchdown.
He did, yeah. We saw a great special teams play this week from the Montreal Alouettes, and we know what their defense can do. We've seen what Davis Alexander can do on offense when he's at the helm, and to have that special teams playing at that elite level as well. Look out for the Montreal Alouettes.
Dustin Crum, 19 of 29 for 162 yards. In a rushing game, it was William Stanback who had a nice night, 11, or a nice morning, I guess, relative to where we were in the country. 11 carries for 73 yards. Dustin Crum did a lot of the heavy hauling, 7 times for 36. And on the other side, the Montreal Alouettes really didn't get much out of their running game. Stevie Scott, 7 carries for 30. Eno Benjamin, 5 carries for 20 yards.
They certainly didn't have to depend on it. 240 yards passing, 59 yards rushing. So not huge offensive numbers. But as we said, when you've got your defense and special teams making plays for you and getting points, the offense just has to play smart. I thought they did a great job of it. Austin Mack was your leading receiver, 5 catches for 87 yards and his first touchdown of the season. Great to see him healthy and back on the field as well.
Let's say that one counts as maybe one of the great catches of the year and deserves to be ranked up there. Catches the ball, has the presence of mind, I guess, relative to him, slide, but then reach out and get across the goal line before anyone touches him. What a brilliant little maneuver that he did at the end. And you could tell he wanted that touchdown so bad.
He did. And for Ottawa, another disappointing loss and not really a strong effort by them by any means. And they've shut Drew Brown down for the season now. It looks like this is Dustin Crum's team for the remainder of this season at least. But do we see Matthew Schultz or do we see Tyree Adams down the stretch here and give them an opportunity to see what they can do? We've had a pretty decent sample size from Dustin Crum this season, and maybe it's time to look elsewhere.
There was so much discussion during the game by Glenn Suter especially. Why wasn't Tyree Adams in the game at the end in the fourth quarter? And I could not for the life of me understand why he was going on and on about that. If you're going to check out what your quarterback is capable of, you've got to leave him in there for the game. And they wanted to see what Dustin Crum was going to do. You've still got the Alouettes next week. You can put Tyree Adams against him and let him start and see what he does against them. That sonnet that he read off over and over and over again, Ottawa did right. Dustin Crum, you get this game. If they want to check out Tyree Adams, you get the next game. You got 3 games to play. You don't have to bust up each game.
I agree. And I guess I should clarify. I wasn't saying that Dustin Crum should have got the hook in this one, but give Tyree Adams a chance to get first team reps. It's going to be a short week. The nice thing is that they're playing the same team back to back. With the Monday game, it's a 5-day span. You probably get 1 practice in there. But if you want Tyree Adams to be a part of this team, I think you've got to evaluate and give him the opportunity to work with that first team offense to see what he can do. I'm not in the room. Maybe Sean Burke and crew are happy with Dustin Crum and what they've seen from him, and Adams is the odd man out. But at this point, they really have nothing to lose. Again, as I talked about the Toronto Argonauts, all the Red Blacks are playing for at this point is, do they miss the playoffs as the 3rd place team or the 4th place team in the West? Throw some things out there and evaluate that talent.
We talked about it on this very podcast. You've got Drew Brown, you've got Dustin Crum, you got Tyree Adams. Those are your 3 quarterbacks. I doubt that the Red Blacks can keep all 3. Most likely Drew Brown stays because of the contract that he has. Dustin Crum and Tyree Adams. You got to decide between those 2, I guess. If either one of them is going to be gone, or if they both stay, how do you pay them?
3rd down.
With a couple of weeks to go in the CFL season, these games are important for a lot of teams still in the playoff picture. The first game Friday night has the Winnipeg Blue Bombers hosting the Saskatchewan Roughriders. This is the 3rd matchup of the season. The Riders have won the first 2. Bombers are a 6.5-point favorite at home, and it looks like Jake Mayer may get the start for the Roughriders at quarterback.
Most likely Jake Mayer will be the starting quarterback for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The Riders are home and cool. They know that they've got first place locked up. They want everybody healthy going into that West final. And Trevor Harris has been dealing with a bad throwing shoulder since Sione Tahema got him in BC way back when the Rough Riders were there in August. The Rough Riders are looking to get out of here without any injuries. They may want to stick it to the Blue Bombers and see if they can do something about their playoff prospects. I don't think that they're going to come into this game lightly, but at home, it's going to be tough for the Blue Bombers not to be fired up and ready to go. I like the cover. I think the Bombers can easily do it.
I tend to agree with you on this one. I think the Bombers at home fighting for their playoff lives win by a touchdown. That's what the spread is indicating right now. Would I be surprised if the Rough Riders tough out a win and sweep the Blue Bombers this season? I don't think so. I think there's enough talent on that Rough Riders team. And we talked about some of those secondary receivers. Don't be surprised if Tommy Neild or Joe Robustelli go for 100 yards in this game. They're going to be more featured receivers at this point than Amelis or Keon Schaefer-Baker. Especially Schaefer Baker, he's been banged up over the last couple seasons as well. You want him healthy going into the playoffs. Jake Maier's a capable quarterback, maybe not the flashiest guy, but I think a good number 2 behind Trevor Harris because of the style of play you get from Jake Maier. That being said, Bombers are going to have all hands on deck to try to win this one and secure that playoff spot. So I'm taking the Bombers at home for the cover.
Only way Riders win is if Zach Collaros has a terrible game, doesn't finish the game, Jake Maier goes lights out, or there are a lot of turnovers.
Any of those is quite possible. So that's why they play the game. Game 2 of the Friday doubleheader, the BC Lions host the Edmonton Elks. Again, barring a Winnipeg Blue Bombers win, the Elks are still mathematically in this playoff race. The Lions are a 5.5 point favorite at home. They are fighting for that home playoff date as well. Them and the Calgary Stampeders neck and neck right now for second overall. What are your thoughts on this one? 5.5 points at home for BC.
The game on Friday early is going to impact the game on Friday late. The Lions, if the Blue Bombers win, the Lions are more fearful of the Blue Bombers than they are anybody else because that's the team that has the seasonal series against them. So if they hear that the Blue Bombers have won, then they're going to have to go all out to defeat the Edmonton Elks. The Elks have to go all out to win to stay in the Western playoffs.
We've seen trials and tribulations by the Edmonton Elks in BC over the recent seasons. I like what I've seen from Edmonton over the last few weeks. I think they keep this one close. There's a lot of pride and a lot of fight left in these Edmonton Elks. I'm picking the Lions to win, but Edmonton beats that 5.5 point spread. I think there's enough will there to make this a competitive game.
In the last few years, Edmonton has been shut out. They've been throttled. They did start the season this year with not a bad game. That was Trey Ford as their quarterback, and they came up short. Nathan Rourke is on fire. That offense is on fire. The defense still is suspect. That's where I think this game could be a little bit higher scoring. Whether the Elks get inside that 5.5, that's a tough one. I don't think so. I think the Lions should win at home and big.
Kicking off Saturday, the return match between the Montreal Alouettes and the Ottawa Redblacks, this time in Ottawa. Odds makers don't think that makes that much of a difference. The Alouettes are an 8.5 point favorite on the road. Given what we saw on Monday, is that a reasonable spread, or do the Redblacks have something left to play for?
Ottawa isn't going anywhere. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're not saving a coach's job. They're not, and none of this else matters. But what does matter is you as a player and you as a group, whether it's defensive line, defensive back, offensive line, you may want to be together next year. So you want to prove to management that this matters to you. And as a group, you're pretty good together. And maybe there's hope for this team next year. After all, they did make the playoffs last year. They went 7-2 at home. What fell off the rails this year? That's going to be up to Sean Burke to determine and see where the fault lay. Alouettes, though, going into this game, first place is still available to them. Alouettes on the road, 8.5. Don't like that. Ottawa's defense is better and better. William Fields is doing the right things there. I just don't know that Ottawa's offense, maybe Torrey Adams gives them everything they need, and this is a close game. Don't know.
Ottawa lost by 20 in 5 days. They have enough to turn that around against the exact same team. I don't think so. You're right. Montreal is still fighting for first place. They're hungry and determined. They are getting themselves playoff ready. I like the Alouettes in another big win this week.
I kind of like the Alouettes on the road as well, but by how much? I don't know. That spread is big.
Closing out the week, the Toronto Argonauts take on the Calgary Stampeders at McMahon Stadium. Calgary, the biggest favorite this week. They're a 9.5 point favorite at home. Does Jarrett Dagey and the Toronto Argonauts have enough left in the tank after that tough game in Saskatchewan to give the Stampeders a run, or does Calgary blow them out of the building?
Calgary went into Toronto earlier this year and beat the Argonauts. I don't see why they can't do it again. Vernon Adams Jr. seems to have found his moxie again, sling it to wherever he wants to go, on target. Stampeders look very good in Hamilton, and that's the top team in the East. And the Stampeders know with a win, they're not in any crossover conversation. I like the Stampeders at home. 9.5. Argonauts proved to Saskatchewan that a 10.5 spread was too big. I kind of like the Argonauts to stay inside of that. The Argos have a lot of pride. And the one thing I'll give Ryan Dinwiddie a lot of credit for is that team will be ready to play.
Late in the year, the altitude and weather in Calgary can give them a little bit of a boost as well. What we've seen from Vernon Adams has been an improvement, trending upwards over the last little while here. I like the Stampeders at home. I think they've got enough to play for, fighting with the Lions, fighting with the Bombers for playoff position. I'm taking the Stamps at home big.
Third Down Gamble uses the expert resources of the Canadian Football League and 3 Down Nation. For up-to-date, insightful statistics and analysis, please visit cfl.ca and 3downnation.com. The CFL on CBC theme music is used with written permission from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you for listening to our show. Third Down Gamble is hosted on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ThirdDownGamble. Join us again next time. The Third Down Gamble Podcast. Audio worth watching.